Didn't bother closing the door. That's what I keep coming back to. Not what they said, not even the way they said it, but the fact that they didn't think it was worth closing the door first. I was in the hallway pulling on my coat when I heard my son-in-law's voice carrying through from the kitchen. Low and certain, the way men talk when they've already decided. She can't do a ski trip, Jenna. She's 67. She'll be on the bunny slope while we're paying for lift tickets she'll never use. My daughter laughed a little. Not meanly. Just the kind of laugh that comes when someone says a thing you've already been thinking but didn't want to say yourself. I know. But how do I tell her? She's been asking about it since October. A pause. The refrigerator humming. Just say it's already planned, that we didn't have room in the rental. She'll understand. I stood very still with one arm halfway into my sleeve. I didn't move for a long time. I just let it settle in me the way cold does when you've been outside too long, and finally come inside and realize how deep it went. She'll understand. I finished putting on my coat. I walked back down the hall to the guest room, where I'd spent the last 3 days helping with the grandchildren. I sat on the edge of the bed. Outside, the neighbor's dog was barking at something in the yard. I had already told them I wanted to come, not insisted, not guilted, just said, the way you say things to your family, that I'd always wanted to see Colorado in February, that I'd been looking into ski lessons for beginners, that I didn't care about the slopes, I'd be happy just walking the village and sitting by the fire and being there when the grandchildren came in pink-cheeked and hungry. I had said all of this over a casserole I made from scratch and brought over on a Tuesday. They had smiled and said it sounded wonderful and changed the subject. That night, after they went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with my phone and looked up the resort they'd mentioned. Snowfield Ridge, 4 stars. Private ski-in, ski-out chalets. I looked at the room types for a long time. Then I looked at the penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows, stone fireplace. Private hot tub on the terrace with a view of the mountain. A full kitchen I would never use. A king bed with a down duvet that looked like it weighed 15 pounds. A dedicated concierge named something like James or Thomas, the kind of name that answered the phone by the second ring. I sat there in their kitchen in my bathrobe and I thought about what it would feel like to stop trying to fit into the corner of someone else's plan. Then I booked it. I didn't tell them. I drove home the next morning with the Tupperware I forgot to ask for back and a confirmation email in my inbox. When my daughter called 2 days later to say they were so sorry, but the rental only had 4 bedrooms and it was going to be tight with the kids, I said, "Oh, that's all right, sweetheart. I understand." I did understand. Just not in the way she meant. The drive to the airport was quiet and cold. The kind of February morning where the sky is the same gray as the road, and you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. I had packed well. 2 good sweaters, my walking boots with the real grip, the cashmere scarf my husband gave me the last Christmas before he got sick. The dark green one I never wore anywhere because I was always saving it for something. I wore it on the plane. I was the first person to check in at the resort. The lobby smelled like cedar and something warm, maybe cardamom, and the woman behind the desk was young and professional and called me by my name when she found my reservation. She paused just briefly when she pulled it up. "Ms. Aldrich," she said, "welcome. You're in the Ridgeline Penthouse. I'll have someone bring your bags up right away." That was the first time in longer than I could remember that someone had looked at me like I was the point of the story. The elevator opened directly into the suite. I stepped out and stood there a moment with my coat still on. The mountain was right there, filling every window. White and blue and enormous, the fire was already lit. I took off my coat. I walked to the window. Below, the village was beginning to wake up. Little lights in shop windows. A man in a bright orange vest dragging a sled across the parking lot. Early skiers in their enormous boots clomping toward the lifts. I thought about my daughter loading car seats in the dark somewhere in Ohio. I thought about my son-in-law folding ski poles into the back of the SUV, already tense about the drive. I made myself a cup of coffee from the machine on the counter and took it to the window and watched the mountain get light. A knock at the door. Young man, maybe 25, pleasant face. Ernest. Ms. Aldrich? I'm Owen. I'll be your concierge for the stay. I just wanted to introduce myself and let you know we have you set up with a private ski lesson at 10 if you'd like, but absolutely no obligation. We also have a reservation held for you at Ember tonight. It's our restaurant on the hill, but again, entirely your choice. I looked at him. How did you know I might want a ski lesson? He smiled. I read your notes when you booked. You mentioned you'd always wanted to try. I had written that in the notes field at 2 in the morning in my daughter's kitchen. I had forgotten I wrote it. I'll take the lesson, I said. He nodded. And dinner? Yes, a table by the window. Of course. He turned to go. Owen, I said. He looked back. Thank you for reading the notes. He looked like he might say something, then just nodded once. The kind of nod that means, I see you. After he left, I went to unpack. I hung the cashmere scarf on the hook by the door where I would actually see it. The ski lesson was not elegant. I want to be honest about that. The instructor was a patient young woman from Vermont who had the practiced calm of someone who had spent years talking scared people through things. I fell twice. The first time I sat in the snow for a moment before she offered her hand, and I thought, well, here I am, 67 years old, sitting in the snow on a mountain in Colorado, and nobody is waiting for me to get up so we can move on. I took her hand and got up. By the end of the hour, I could do a slow, careful turn. It wasn't much. It felt like everything. At lunch, I sat alone at a small table in the lodge and ate a bowl of soup that was better than it had any right to be. The room was full of families with that particular ski vacation energy, bright and loud and coated in fleece, parents untangling goggle straps, children demanding hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. I watched them without feeling sorry for myself. That surprised me. An older woman settled into the chair across from me, not rudely, there was no other seat. She was about my age, maybe a few years older, wearing a wool sweater the color of pine needles and no makeup except lipstick. She looked like she had made a decision about herself a long time ago and been comfortable with it ever since. Mind? She asked, already sitting. Not at all. She ordered black coffee and a grilled cheese and pulled out a paperback with a cracked spine. Then she looked up and said, First time? That obvious? The way you're watching everyone, not envious, just interested. Is that unusual? She considered. Most people who come alone either look like they're waiting for someone to notice them or like they're daring someone to feel sorry for them. She turned to Paige. You look like neither. Her name was Frances. I saw it on a luggage tag hanging from her bag, and she told me later without me asking, the way people sometimes do when they've decided to trust you. She was from Portland, and she had been coming to this resort every February for 9 years, always alone, always the same week. Her children thought she went with a friend. She had never corrected this. Why not? I asked. She shrugged. Because then I'd have to explain it. And I got tired of explaining myself about 15 years ago. I laughed. It was the first real laugh I'd had in days. We finished lunch, and she went back to her book, and I went back to the mountain. Not to ski, just to walk the perimeter trail, the one that wound along the tree line and was packed flat enough for boots. The cold was clean, and the only sound was my breath and the occasional shudder of snow falling from a branch. I thought about the last time I'd done something purely because I wanted to, not because someone needed me, not because it was helpful or sensible or what a good mother, a good grandmother, a useful person would do. I couldn't come up with a specific memory. I could only find a long blur of casseroles and babysitting and staying quiet in the corner of other people's plans. I walked until my toes went numb and then I turned back. Dinner at Ember was the kind of meal that asks something of you. The room was all dark wood and low candlelight, and the menu had maybe 12 items, and every single one of them had been thought about. I ordered duck with a cherry reduction and a glass of burgundy that the sommelier chose when I described myself as someone who preferred not to be asked too many questions. He brought exactly the right thing. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed. My daughter, I looked at the screen. then set it face down. I know how that sounds. I know what kind of mother that makes me look like. But here's the thing. For 67 years, I had picked up every call, every time, whether I was in the middle of something or not, whether I was tired or not, whether I wanted to or not. I had treated her name on my screen like a summons. And for what? So she could tell me the rental only had 4 bedrooms? I finished my duck. I ordered the chocolate tart. I called her back from the terrace afterward with the mountain dark above me and the village lit up below. Mom, I was starting to worry. I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm in Colorado. A silence, long enough that I could hear her recalibrating. What? Snowfield Ridge. I'm in the penthouse. You would love the fireplace. Another silence. Then carefully, you booked a trip? By yourself? I did. Why didn't you tell us? I thought about that for a moment. I didn't need to. She was quiet again. In the background, I could hear my grandchildren, small voices, some minor dispute about something. My son-in-law saying something low I couldn't make out. Mom, we could have Jenna. I kept my voice gentle. Not cold, gentle. I'm going to call you tomorrow. I just wanted you to know I'm safe. She said okay. She said she loved me. I said I loved her too, because I did, because that was never the question. I went inside and sat by the fire until midnight. The second morning, I woke up without an alarm. This is something people say often, and I never used to think it meant much. But when you spent 35 years of your life waking to the sound of someone needing you, waking to nothing but your own readiness is its own kind of luxury. I made coffee. I took it to the terrace in the cold. The mountain was pink at the edges. The hot tub was steaming. I thought I have never once in my adult life sat in a hot tub alone. So I did. I sat in that hot tub for 45 minutes and watched the sun come up over the mountain and thought about absolutely nothing important. Owen came by later with a schedule of the day's activities. Snowshoe tour at 11. Wine and cheese in the library at 4. A visiting jazz quartet that evening in the main lodge. The jazz, I said. Definitely the jazz, he made a note. Anything else? Is Frances at breakfast? The woman in the pine green sweater? He didn't miss a beat. She usually takes the corner table by the window. Would you like me to tell her you'll be by? No, I said. I'll find her. She was where he said, already halfway through eggs and the newspaper. She looked up when I sat down and moved her bag off the other chair without being asked. That afternoon, the wine tasting had 8 people around a long table in a room lined with bookshelves. A retired professor from Michigan who kept referencing his late wife in a way that was tender and not sad. 2 women from Atlanta who finished each other's sentences and had been friends since college. A young couple from Seattle who were obviously nervous about whether they were enjoying the wine correctly. I relaxed in a way I hadn't in months, maybe years. There was no one at that table who needed anything from me. I was just a woman drinking good wine on a mountain. It was enough to make me want to cry, not out of sadness, but the way you cry when you've been holding your breath for so long that finally breathing feels like too much all at once. On the 3rd morning, I was on the terrace reading when I heard the door to the suite next to mine open. Then a voice, small, immediate. Daddy, I can see the whole mountain. I froze. Then a second voice. Older. A boy's. That's because we're at the top, obviously. And then a woman's voice, familiar in the way that you recognize weather before it arrives. My daughter. I sat very still. I looked down at my book without seeing it. I listened to my grandchildren discover the mountain through a wall, a suitcase rolling. My son-in-law's voice, lower, asking about the heat. My daughter saying she'd left something in the car. I understood immediately. The rental must have fallen through, or they'd found a last-minute opening, or perhaps Jenna had spent the night after my call feeling something she couldn't name and had made a decision. I didn't know which, and I wasn't sure it mattered. What mattered was that they were 12 feet away, and they didn't know I was there. I could have knocked. I could have called out. I could have made it easy and saved everyone the particular discomfort of what was about to unfold. Instead, I turned a page I didn't read and stayed where I was. Let them settle in. Let them find their rhythms. Let them be a family on a ski trip while I was a woman on a terrace. For now, that felt right. It was my granddaughter who found me. She was 6, which meant she had a talent for appearing in places without apparent explanation. One moment I was alone on the terrace, and the next moment a small face was peering over the railing from the one next door, bundled in a yellow parka so large she looked like a very determined banana. "Grandma?" she said, with the total lack of surprise that 6-year-olds reserve for the miraculous. "Hello, darling." She considered the situation. "You have a bigger balcony." "I do." "Did you know we were coming?" "I didn't." She processed this. "Daddy says we got an upgrade because of a computer mistake." "That's probably true." "Can I come to your balcony?" "You'll have to go through the hall." She disappeared. 30 seconds later, she knocked on my door. I opened it, and she walked in without ceremony, trailed by her brother, who was 8 and more cautious, and stood in the doorway, looking at the suite with an expression that was equal parts impressed and suspicious. "You have a fire," he said. "I do. It's not even cold enough for a fire." "I know," I said, "but I wanted one." He came inside. We sat by the fire for a while, the 3 of us, and I let them investigate the room the way children do, picking things up and putting them down, pressing buttons on the remote, asking questions about the hot tub. My granddaughter found the bowl of wrapped chocolates on the nightstand and looked at me for permission, and I said, "Take as many as you want," which is the kind of thing grandmothers are allowed to say. When Jenna knocked, maybe 20 minutes later, she pushed the door open slowly, the way you enter a room when you're not sure what you'll find there. She looked at me, then around the suite, then back at me. "Mom." "Hi, sweetheart. You're in the penthouse." "Yes, we're in the suite next door. I heard you arrive." She sat down in the chair across from me. Her son was demonstrating something on the television, and her daughter was reorganizing my chocolate bowl. The fire crackled between us. "You booked this before we even told you about the trip," she said. It was not a question. "I booked it the night I came over for dinner, the Tuesday before last." She looked down at her hands. "You heard us." I didn't make her say what she'd said. I heard enough. The room was quiet for a moment except for the children. My granddaughter had moved on to examining the telescope by the window. My grandson had found the remote for the fireplace and was exercising extreme self-control about not pressing any buttons. "I'm sorry," Jenna said. I looked at her. She was 41 years old, and still, when she was ashamed of something, she got a particular set to her jaw that she'd had since she was 9. "I know," I said. I wasn't trying to exclude you. I just thought it would be easier," I said. "Yes, I know." She looked up. "You thought I'd be a complication," I said, not unkindly, just practically. "And maybe you were right. Maybe I would have complained about the altitude or slowed down the morning runs. But Jenna, you didn't ask. You decided. And then you let me walk in the room and offer to help with the snacks, and nobody said a word." She pressed her fingers to her mouth. Not crying, just holding something in. "Mom, She stopped, started again. "You look so happy this morning." "On the terrace. I was watching you from the window before I knocked, and you looked." She shook her head. "I don't think I've seen you look like that in a long time." That hit me somewhere unexpected. "What did I look like?" I asked. "Like you were just there. Not waiting. Not needed. Just there." I thought about the hot tub at dawn. The pink edge of the mountain. "Yes," I said. "That's what it felt like." My son-in-law appeared in the doorway then. He looked at me and then at Jenna and took in the room in that quick way of his. He said, "The kid said Grandma had a fire," and there was something sheepish in his voice. "She does," my daughter said, not sharp, just a fact. He came in and sat on the arm of the sofa, which was always how he sat when he was uncomfortable, perched like he might need to leave quickly. He looked at me. "I owe you an apology," he said. He didn't elaborate or dress it up. I respected that. "You do," I said. And I'll take it. He nodded once. My granddaughter appeared between us with a chocolate in each hand and said she had decided we should all watch a movie together, and that was the end of the serious conversation, which was probably for the best. We watched half an animated film about a bear who learns to navigate without a compass. The children fell asleep against me. Jenna and her husband sat on the sofa, and at some point he put his arm around her and she leaned into him, and they both looked tired in the same way, which I recognized as marriage. When I finally stood up to carry my granddaughter to bed, Jenna helped, and we tucked her in together without talking, the way mothers and daughters do things, our hands moving in the same directions at the same time, like we were reading from the same old script. At the door, Jenna stopped. "Are you coming to the slopes tomorrow?" she asked. "Maybe for a bit. I'm not a strong skier." "I know. That's okay." She looked at me. "You can do whatever you want." "Yes," I said. "I know I can." I closed the door gently and walked back through the suite to the terrace. The village was quiet below. The mountain was enormous and cold and completely indifferent to everything that had happened in that room. I stood there for a while in my coat and scarf, the green one, and thought about nothing in particular. Frances and I had breakfast again the next morning, just the two of us. I told her the whole story. She listened without interrupting, which is rarer than it sounds. When I was done, she poured more coffee and said, "Did you need them to find you? Or did it just happen?" I thought about it. It just happened. But when it did, I didn't run. "That's the thing," she said. "Most women our age, when they get caught being themselves, apologize. Make it smaller. Say, 'Oh, I didn't mean to. Oh, it's not a big deal.'" She wrapped both hands around her mug. "We spend 50 years shrinking ourselves into whatever shape fits the available space. And then one day, you stop. And people act like you've changed." "Maybe I have." "No," she said. "You just stopped pretending you hadn't." The last 2 days passed gently. I skied twice more, slow and deliberate and occasionally falling, and I stopped minding the falling. My grandson decided to take the beginner lesson with me on the third day, whether out of kindness or strategy, I'm not sure. But he held his ski poles with a concentration so intense it made me love him unreasonably. My daughter and I walked the village one afternoon, just the two of us. We bought nothing. We looked in windows, we had hot chocolate at a small place with wooden stools and steam on the glass, and we talked for the first time in years about things that weren't logistics. She told me she was tired. Not vacation tired, but tired. I told her I understood. "I think I've been waiting for things to calm down," she said. "And they don't. There's always something." "There is always something," I agreed. "How do you do it? Just decide to take the trip. Book the penthouse. Not tell anyone." She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her face before. Not admiration exactly, more like curiosity. Like she was trying to figure out if she could learn it. "You stop asking for permission," I said. "From other people and from yourself." She was quiet for a moment. "I didn't know you needed permission. I thought you just—" "I don't know. I thought you were fine." "I was fine," I said, and then I decided to be better than fine. On the last morning, I packed slowly. I folded the cashmere scarf last because it had done its work and deserved the treatment. I left a note for Owen, thanking him for the cinnamon rolls he'd had sent up on the third morning without being asked, because I'd mentioned offhand that I missed my own baking. At checkout, the woman at the desk said, "We hope to see you again, Miss Aldrich." "You will," I said. In the lobby, I found Frances also checking out. We exchanged numbers on the back of napkins like it was 1987, because neither of us fully trusts the phone for these things. She hugged me and said, "Next year I might try the ski lesson." "Don't fall in front of the children," I told her. "They remember." She laughed and walked out to her car. Jenna drove me to the airport. Just her, while her husband stayed back with the children for the last few hours of checkout. We didn't talk much in the car, but it was a different kind of quiet than we'd had in years. Not the quiet of things unsaid, but the quiet of things settled. At the curb, she got out to help with my bag, which she didn't need to do. "Mom," she said, "next time we plan a trip, I'm going to ask." I looked at her. "Good. And you'll tell me what you actually want, not just what's fine?" "I'll try," I said. "It's a habit that takes some breaking." She hugged me. The real kind. The lasting kind. I went inside. I found my gate. I sat with my coat folded in my lap and my book open to a page I didn't read and looked out at the tarmac where planes were moving in slow, certain lines. I thought about the penthouse, the mountain at dawn, the jazz quartet playing something I didn't recognize but stood near anyway until I did. My granddaughter's chocolate-covered fingers, my grandson's ski poles and his extraordinary concentration, the retired professor talking about his wife like she was still in the next room. I thought about what Jenna said. You looked like you were just there. That's all it was. I was just there, in a room I chose, in a life I had stopped asking permission to live. The plane boarded early. I walked down the jetway with my scarf around my neck and my bag over one shoulder, and did not rush, did not apologize for taking up space in the aisle, did not move my things before I was ready. I found my seat. I sat down. Outside the oval window, the sky was white and enormous. I was ready to go home, not because the trip was over, but because for the first time in as long as I could remember, home was somewhere I was choosing to go. If this story found you at the right moment, sit with it. You'll know what to do next. I've been thinking about that hallway a lot. Not the ski mountain, not the penthouse fireplace, not even the morning in the hot tub, watching the sun come up pink over the ridge. Just the hallway. The coat sleeve halfway on. The refrigerator humming. My daughter's voice carrying through a door nobody thought to close. That moment had been building for years. Not because anyone was cruel. Jenna wasn't cruel. Her husband wasn't cruel. They were just busy, and I had made myself so easy to overlook for so long that they'd stopped looking. That's the part I had to sit with. The choices I made, every yes when I meant no, every time I folded myself into the corner of their plans and called it love. Those choices had consequences. Not punishment. Consequences. There's a difference. And it matters. What I did in that kitchen, booking the penthouse on my laptop in my bathrobe at 2 in the morning, wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite dressed up as self-respect. It was the first honest decision I'd made for myself in longer than I could measure. And the honesty of it, the clarity of just doing the thing without asking anyone's permission. That was the whole lesson, right there in one act. Frances said it better than I could. She said most women our age, when they get caught being themselves, apologize. Make it smaller. And she was right. I had done that my whole life. Caught being happy, I'd qualify it. Caught wanting something, I'd minimize it. Caught taking up space, I'd shrink. Not out of weakness. Out of a habit so old it had started to feel like personality. What I found on that mountain, and I don't mean the skiing, I was genuinely bad at the skiing, was that the habit could be broken. Not in a dramatic way, not with a speech or a confrontation, just by doing things differently, one choice at a time. Booking the room, letting the phone ring through dinner, standing on the terrace in the green scarf I'd been saving for some imaginary occasion that was never going to arrive. My grandson's face when he walked into that suite and saw the fire. My granddaughter reorganizing my chocolate bowl like it was her right. Jenna sitting across from me saying you look like you were just there. Those things happened because I stopped performing smallness and started simply existing at full size. That's what I want to carry forward. Not the suite, not the mountain, the understanding that the life I kept waiting for permission to live was already mine. It had always been mine. I just kept handing it to other people to manage and wondering why I felt invisible. Cause and effect is a patient thing. You spend decades, making yourself convenient, and eventually convenience is all anyone expects of you. But the reverse is also true. You spend 1 week deciding that your comfort matters, that your time is worth protecting, that you are a person and not a function, and something shifts. Not overnight. Not completely. But Jenna said she would ask next time. And I believe her. Not because I taught her a lesson. Because she saw something in me she hadn't seen in a long time, and it reminded her that I was still here. I'm still here. That's the whole story, really. I didn't go anywhere. I just finally showed up.